All right, let's talk about a guy whose name is basically synonymous with failure, Charles Cornwallis. But what if I told you that the story of the general who lost America is actually the story of how the British Empire was reborn? You see, his career spans two totally different empires, one of settlement and one of conquest. And believe it or not, he was a key player in both. When you hear the name Cornwallis, one image probably pops into your head, right? The surrender at Yorktown. He's that guy, the British general who lost the American colonies, the famous loser of the Revolution. It's pretty much seen as the single defining moment of his entire career, but is it really? Well, as you can probably guess, that's only half the story. Not even close. Yorktown wasn't the end for him. In a lot of ways, it was the beginning of his real legacy. His defeat in America marked the death of one kind of empire, for sure, but his next chapter would see him become a key architect of a second, entirely different British Empire. So how did that happen? Okay, first things first. To really get Cornwallis, you have to understand the world that made him. And that was Britain's first empire. This was a global power built squarely on the Atlantic, all about trade, settlement, and this very specific idea of liberty. This contrast right here is the absolute key to his whole story. The first empire, the one he was born into, was all about Atlantic trade and American settlement. Its whole philosophy was based on the rights of freeborn Englishmen, this belief in certain liberties that were supposed to apply whether you were in London or Boston. But the second empire, the one he helped build, totally different beast. It was based on conquest out in the East, pulling in cash, and ruling directly over millions of non-British people. Cornwallis's life is literally the bridge between these two worlds. So, being a product of the British elite, Cornwallis's path pretty much led straight to the army. His early career was forged in the 7 Years' War, that massive global showdown between Britain and France. But here's the thing, he wasn't fighting in America or India just yet. Nope, he was in Germany, serving as a lieutenant colonel in battles like Willinghausen, defending this Atlantic-focused empire from its biggest rival. And then, the crisis hit. The one that would shatter that entire world. Victory in the 7 Years' War came at a jaw-dropping cost, and it led directly to the American Revolution and the collapse of that first British Empire. So this number you're looking at, that represents the crippling, staggering debt Britain was facing after winning the 7 Years' War. I mean, it was a victory that nearly bankrupted the entire country. London was desperate for money to defend its massive new empire, and its eyes turned west, straight towards its American colonies. Now, from London's point of view, the logic was pretty simple. The war had been fought, at least in part, to protect the American colonies. So shouldn't the colonies help pay for it? Makes sense, right? More than that, they believed Parliament's authority was supreme over the entire empire, no exceptions. So to them, the American resistance wasn't some noble stand. It was just being difficult. So this thing escalated way beyond a simple argument over taxes, and fast. For the British government, as one politician put it, the very sovereignty of this kingdom was on the line. They figured if they backed down to the colonists, they wouldn't just lose control of taxes, they'd lose control of the whole imperial project. And, well, we all know how this story ended. The fight over sovereignty led to war, and for Cornwallis, it led to him surrendering his entire army at Yorktown in 1781. This wasn't just a military loss. It was the symbolic death of that first Atlantic-centric British Empire. For any other general, this would have been it. Career over, humiliation. But for Cornwallis, it was just a turning point. Which brings us to the second act of his career. Get this, just 5 years after losing America, Cornwallis gets handed a massive new job on the other side of the planet. He's sent to govern British India and basically forge a whole new kind of empire out of the chaos left by a private company. Now, the power Cornwallis was sent to take over wasn't a normal colony. It was the East India Company. It had started out as just a trading firm, but through a wild mix of local politics, war, and some very shrewd deals, this private corporation had basically become its own country. It had its own army, its own government, and it ruled over millions of people. It was a total accidental empire, and it was run for profit. So how in the world did a company become a ruler? Well, it happened in stages. First, simple trading posts. Then, the company started playing kingmaker in local Indian politics. A few decisive military victories gave them real power. And then came the final step. In 1765, they got the Diwani of Bengal, which is the right to collect taxes. And that's the key. The moment you're the one collecting taxes, you are the government. A company of merchants had officially become an imperial power. This new corporate empire was, to put it mildly, a complete mess. It was corrupt, violent, and wildly inefficient. So Cornwallis's mission was to go in there and clean house. He was sent to transform this mess into a stable, powerful, and authoritarian arm of the British state. Think about the irony here. The man who lost an empire of settlers demanding their rights was now tasked with building an empire of subjects under absolute rule. But his job as the empire's fixer wasn't done yet. After setting up a new model of rule in India, he was sent to handle one of the most explosive parts of the empire, way closer to home, Ireland. And here, faced with a full-blown rebellion, he would show yet again the brutal math of what it takes to run an empire. In 1798, a massive rebellion explodes across Ireland. Cornwallis is sent in as both the top political leader and the military commander with one job: crush it. His methods were absolutely ruthless. As one historian puts it, after one battle, he executed over 200 Irish prisoners. So no, he is certainly not remembered fondly. This was the iron fist of empire, and Cornwallis was holding it.
And yet, and this is what makes him so complicated, at the same time he's carrying out these brutal reprisals, Cornwallis was also a big supporter of Catholic emancipation. That means giving political rights to Ireland's Catholic majority. Now, he wasn't doing this because he was some kind of liberal hero. He was an imperial pragmatist. He believed that for the empire to be stable in the long run, it needed to make some deals with its subjects, not just constantly crush them.
So what does this all add up to? When you look at his entire career, from America to India to Ireland, you see a guy who is so much more than just the loser of a single war. What you really see is the living embodiment of a rapidly and violently changing empire. I mean, just look at this timeline. It maps out an incredible global journey. He starts in Germany, fighting the French. Then he's off to America for that historic defeat. From there, it's to India, building a new system of authoritarian rule. Then over to Ireland to put down a rebellion. And he even ends up in France as a diplomat, signing a peace treaty with Napoleon. His career was lived right at the center of global power and conflict. And this right here is the main takeaway. Cornwallis's legacy isn't really Yorktown. It's the pivotal, often violent, imperial transformation that he personally oversaw. He lived through the death of the First British Empire, the one defined by settlement and ideas of liberty, and he became a chief architect of the Second, an empire of conquest, authoritarian government, and resource extraction, a model that would define British rule for the next 150 years.
So how should we remember Charles Cornwallis? Is he the villain of Yorktown in Ireland? Is he a brilliant administrator who built the foundation of British India? Or is he something more complex? A man who perfectly reflects the pragmatic, ruthless, and transformative nature of empire itself. A figure whose entire career was forged in the violent birth of our modern world.